I have shared before my personal love of libraries and books, which I inherited from my parents, but especially my father, may memory be for a blessing, and also for children's books, which my parents gratefully read to me as a child. I was able to also read to them, to my children as they were growing up, and just really to have a love of this literature of children's books. And so I share today another, I guess we have show and tell, another book called Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. I brought the Hebrew version as well, but many of you are probably familiar with it. And why do I love children's books? Maybe many of you do as well, because I think of them like zip files on our computer. What is a zip file? It is a compressed file that has all of the data, has all of these lessons compressed into a short book, usually with beautiful illustrations. And then it requires, in this case, our imaginations, our hard disks, to unpack in order for it to be usable. And so a children's story delivers us important lessons in a small batch, and then we can really just let it blossom and unpack the lesson. And so let's recall what Where the Wild Things is about. It opens with the child Max dressed in a costume, kind of wandering wildly around, causing a wild rumpus. And his mom says, "You have to stop this." And Max just says, "No, I will not," and even I think calls her a name. And so she sends Max up to his room without any supper. And then his imagination begins. He's on a ship for 1 whole year. Now we know why it's in his mind. And travels to where the wild things are. And he sees these wild things with their terrible roar and their terrible teeth and their claws. But he can roll his eyes and gnash his teeth, and he controls them. The wild rumpus goes on, but then he gets tired. And he goes home. Doesn't take him a year. Somehow he magically gets home so quickly. And what's waiting for him? The hot dinner that his mom left him. And things have come back to calm, sort of back to normal. So what is going on in this book? It actually caused a little bit of a controversy in 1964 when it came out. What Sendak is doing is inviting the inner child or the child that you're reading it to really explore their feelings and to accept that there are times that we have angst and anger and we want to gnash our teeth and make a wild rumpus, and telling us not to hold those in, but instead to deal with them, find an appropriate way to air them out. We shouldn't be, calling our parents names or disrespecting them or hurting others. But we should know that sometimes we need to go to where the wild things are and let our feelings out. This week's Torah portion is called Bemidbar, in the wilderness. And it begins a book which is hard for us to read. If we get in deeper and deeper into it, we're going to find complaining, we're going to find rebellion, we're going to find plague and plenty of anger to go around between God, Moses, and the people of Israel. They are really in a wilderness, sometimes where they say the wild things are actually there. And then we get to the promised land towards the end. And so even our own book, Bemidbar, is about going into the wilderness. And the Haftarah that Lily read so beautifully is also, perhaps in this case, with the problems of rage. Saul is angry and jealous that he has been punished, that the kingship has been taken away from him, but most importantly, from his son. Where is his legacy going to be? And he throws spears around. But Jonathan knows who he is. He is David's friend. He is loyal to David, loyal to the people of Israel, and is okay, actually, with his position. Where does our equilibrium come from? It comes from knowing who we are. Yes, we have to go into the wilderness sometimes to discover who we are, but when we get into the promised land, we know who we are, and we can hold our feelings appropriately, not hold them in, but to hold them appropriately. There are many, many adult books out there as well that help us, like Where the Wild Things Are, discover who we are or really be inspired by others who discover who they are. And some of them that I've been reading actually deal with women who take hikes in the actual wilderness and use the wilderness to discover who they are. The first one I read was Wild by Cheryl Strayed, which we actually became a movie in 2014 starring Reese Witherspoon. But more importantly, the one that struck me the most is a book called Windswept. Again, the library suggested it to me. It's called Windswept, Walking the Paths of Trailblazing Women by Annabelle Abbs. And she has discovered women in history in the 19th and 20th century, including Frida Lawrence, D.H. Lawrence's wife, as well as Georgia O'Keeffe, and other women who had an identity that I would say is not conforming to the identity of their time period. But they would go out into the wilderness, we know from Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings of the far west, and discover the beauty of the world, but also the inner beauty of themselves. And Annabelle Abbs is inspiring us, men and women alike, to really go into the wilderness, perhaps for real, or like Max and Marie Sendek's book, in our minds, to discover who we are, to become one with our feelings, know that sometimes we feel rage and anger, but if we know who we are and we are centered, then really our good selves can come out and we can go to the promised land. So wishing everybody beautiful journeys as we get to Shavuot, the journey of entering the Mount of Mount Sinai, as well as the summer months, if we can get outside and discover who we are. Shabbat Shalom.